So I'm Jenny Goodemote. I'm the director here at Wood Library, and this is...
Carrie Magnan. I'm the circulation supervisor in one of the library's two.
Yes. Very good.
Not available right now.
You do. And I guess I talk about Starbucks every time, so...
I guess so.
Yeah. There's always something to be said.
That's right.
So I'm curious how many people out here have heard of this case. Okay. All right. This was relatively new to me, which I was surprised because I was wondering, like, how is it possible I've never heard of this? Because it seems like something I would have heard about, and it's been dragging on for years. And then
Jenny actually texted me to ask me if I had heard.
Yeah.
And I said yes.
Yes. And I thought I actually found a case that Carrie didn't know about, and that it wasn't... I thought maybe you didn't know about it, and that this was before our conversation.
Which was the one that I...
No, I was wondering if this was one that you didn't know about.
Yeah, no.
Because you never... And then you told me, oh, yeah, it was on Unsolved Mysteries. So
It was
I was
on
like,
Unsolved
okay,
Mysteries.
then you definitely know about it. Of course. We all know how much you watched Unsolved Mysteries.
It's true.
Okay, so let's get started. So this is about the death of Martha Moxley. And I want to kind of give you a little bit of background. This takes place in Belle Haven, Connecticut, which was or still is, a wealthy community in Greenwich. I find it interesting. It looks like Greenwich, but
It does look like Greenwich, but you just pronounce Greenwich.
Yes, yeah. I know, I figured that out. And this happens in 1975. So we have two families that are pretty much involved right from the start. The first picture shows the Skakel family, who are actually related to the Kennedy family. And I'll get into that in a little bit. And then we have the Moxley family that's right there to the right. And the person we'll be speaking about today, or the victim, I should say, is Martha here. She's 15 years old. Her and her family moved to the area, so to Greenwich, Connecticut, from California just a year before. And she was known to be a very outgoing girl in a reserved community, but everyone was attracted to her because she was like that typical California girl, and she got a lot of attention because of it. And then over here, like I said, is the Skakel family, pretty large family. There's one sister, and that's Julie, but the two that we're going to focus on, this is Tommy Skakel, and I believe here is Michael Skakel. And at the time of the crime, Tommy was 17 and Michael was 15. As I said, Greenwich, Connecticut is our setting. This here is the Moxley home. And then this kind of gives you an idea where two homes were located. So they're across the street from each other, but the yards are pretty big. So not directly across the street, but off to the side. So the Skakel family lived across the street. As you saw in that picture, they were a big family with 7 kids. Rushton was the father, Rushton Skakel, and Ann Reynolds was the mother, but she actually passed away from brain cancer in 1973, so 2 years before this crime.
Rushton is like just raising.
Yes, and it was said that he wasn't home all that often. He had a really hard time processing his wife's death.
Understandable.
He would have maids and tutors come into the house because he just had a really hard time parenting the children. It was also said that the kids ran amok, did what they wanted, got into drugs and alcohol pretty early on. But they were a wealthy family due to a fortune they inherited from their family's mining company. And the Skakel family is actually related to the Kennedys, like I said. So Rushton's sister Ethel had married Robert F. Kennedy in 1950. So that's the time. So let's talk about the crime then. This is taking place on Mischief Night, which I grew up with a version of this. I don't know about you, but it was called Beggar's Night.
I remember
in the Buffalo area.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
So this would have been the night before Halloween. You didn't have any type of traditions?
I don't think so. I don't remember anything about that.
Carrie just wasn't cool enough.
I was left out of all of those fun things, so I didn't take part.
Okay. Does anyone know what that is? Okay, so it's a night where you go out, you do harmless pranks. You ring the doorbell, you run away, you have toilet paper, eggs. I don't consider that harmless. I think that's terrible.
Yeah. I think it's different when you're
We'll talk about that another time.
They do that in Cheshire, right?
Yeah,
but that's on Halloween. Yeah, it's not the night before.
Yeah. So this is Mischief Night. So the night before Halloween, October 30th, 1975, Martha, two friends, Helen Ix and Jeff Byrne, and Tommy and Michael Skakel, they were hanging out in the family's car listening to music around 9 p.m. So They wanted to go out to the car and just listen to tunes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Martha sat in the front seat between Tommy and Michael.
Okay.
And at 9:20, two of their other brothers came out, kicked them out of the car because they needed to drive their cousin Jimmy Tyrion home. And they also wanted to watch the premiere of
Unsolved Mysteries. Oh, that was Starsky and Hutch.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, this is perfect for you. Keep
I
guessing.
know,
So you know, y'all.
The Streets of San Francisco.
Convoy.
Kojak.
No, actually, I don't think you'll get
Okay,
it.
give me one hint, and I'll see if I can get it.
Monty Python's
Oh, Holy Grail.
Flying Circus.
Oh, Flying Circus. Okay.
So they want to watch the season premiere of that. So they told everyone, get out of the car. We need to drive our cousin home, and we want to catch the premiere of Monty Python's Flying Circus. So Michael, the younger one, the 15-year-old, went with them, and Tommy, the 17-year-old, stayed behind with Martha and Helen and Jeff. So then the friends, Helen and Jeff, became uncomfortable because there's some flirtatious behavior going on between Tommy and Martha.
Okay.
At least that's how they viewed it. And then at one point, Tommy pushed Martha down into some bushes and he fell on top of her. And that's when the friends decided to leave. Like, all right, we're going to leave now. This is just getting weird. And this was around 9:30 at night. So fast forward to 1 o'clock in the morning. Dorothy Moxley, who is Martha's mother, was worried that Martha wasn't home. She missed her curfew. Her curfew was actually 9:30 at night. And she called around the neighborhood, including the Skakel house. She had woken up Tommy, and he told her he left Martha at 9:30 p.m. John, who was Dorothy's son and Martha's brother, he drove around Bellhaven looking for her, couldn't find her. And then Dorothy makes the first phone call to the police at 3:48 in the morning. And then they begin to search. When the sun came up and Martha still wasn't home, Dorothy walked over to the Skakels. She knocked on the door and Michael answered, so the younger brother answered. And Dorothy recalled Michael looking unhealthy and hungover, which I guess isn't surprised given the fact that they had free reign with
Yeah, and it was
alcohol.
mischief night. They were probably out, but
They were being mischievous.
Yes, exactly.
Around noon the next day, Martha's body is discovered by her friend Sheila. What ended up happening was a bunch of her friends got together to create a search party, and Sheila was just cutting through the yard.
Between the Skakel house and her, cutting through.
Because I think Sheila's house is actually behind
okay.
Moxley's. So
Yes,
she was coming
okay.
up through the backyard,
Gotcha.
in the side yard.
Yep, gotcha.
And that's where she saw Martha. She was under a pine tree on the Moxley property, so toward the backyard, face down with her pants and underwear pulled down to her knees. Her hair was red due to the amount of blood that was there. A shattered golf club was driven through her neck. I know. There was no evidence of sexual assault. A path was visible where she was dragged into the high grass to her then final resting place under the pine tree. So
she
you'll
was
see
killed
that.
somewhere else and then dragged.
Yes, and you'll see.
Yeah, you can
You'll
see.
see. I mean, I don't know if she was actually killed
Yeah.
somewhere else, but
Yeah.
the beating started somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you'll see that she
Yeah.
was dragged.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was a trail of blood found on the Moxley driveway, so that's bottom left there. This was where the shaft of the golf club was found. So it seems like the attack started when she was returning home and going up the driveway. The handle was missing.
Okay.
The golf club was a Tony Penna 6-iron, which was believed to be part Anne, the mother, Anne Skakel's set, and it was considered rare. So this wasn't something that every household had in Bellhaven.
Yeah.
They were like the only family to own a set like this, and of course that club was missing. Many witnesses claim that golf clubs were often strewn about on the Skakel's lawn too. So there's like those, like my house, my kids leave their toys out like laying
Yeah.
around. So like, what's wrong with you? But that's what was happening here too. Like they
Okay.
just left stuff out on the lawn, so it was readily available. So you'll get an idea too, looking at this picture, where the attack started. And you'll see that there was pieces of the golf club found along the way, as well as blood. And then you'll see that she was dragged, and then this is where she was found. Again, this is all on the Moxley property. So here's some additional background information. Police did look at Martha's diary, and she gave some insight as to what she was dealing with, I guess you can say. I'll read a few excerpts here. September 12th, 1975, she writes, "Dear Diary, me, Jackie, Michael, and Tom went driving in Tom's car. Margie and I kept yelling out the sunroof. I drove a little then, and I was practically sitting on Tom's lap because I was only steering. He kept putting his hand on my knee. Then we went to Friendly's, and Michael treated me, and he got me a double, but I only wanted a single, so I threw the top scoop the window. I think she means out the window. Then I was driving again, and Tom put his arm around me. He kept doing stuff like that. Then there's indications in her diary where Tommy was trying to get to first base, to second base, hit a home run, all those things with sexual connotations. Another entry says, I went to a party. Tom S. was being an ass. At the dance, he kept putting his arms around me, making moves. And then another entry read, Michael was so totally out of it that he was being a real asshole in his actions and words. He kept telling me that I was leading Tom on when I don't like him, except as a friend. Michael jumps to conclusions. I can't be friends with Tom just because I talk to him. It doesn't mean I like him. I really have to stop going over there. Okay, so those are some of her diary entries. So the police investigation. So just like many of the other cases I cover, this police department did not have experience with homicides.
No, that seems to be a pattern.
And it's not going to necessarily end well, fortunately. The crime scene was not secured. News of the murder was shared over an open car radio rather than a phone, resulting in a chaotic scene then, because everyone heard about it and hustled on.
News channels are over there, I'm sure. And
Yep.
people and friends and
Yep. The Connecticut medical examiner couldn't perform the autopsy until the following day and also didn't view the murder scene. Because of the delay then, the medical examiner could only determine the cause of death to be within a 7-hour window.
Okay.
And that 7-hour window was from 9:30 at night, the night of mischief night, 5 in the morning. So it's a pretty wide range of when this happened.
Yep.
The two friends, Jeff and Helen, if you remember them, they were in the car listening to tunes. They remembered Tommy's advances on Martha.
Okay.
He had placed his hand on her thigh or knee 2 times. Both times he was rebuffed by Martha. Okay, so Tommy then is interviewed by the police. Tommy admitted going home around 9:30 to finish a school paper on Abraham Lincoln. At 10:15 p.m., he joined Ken Littleton, who was the live-in tutor.
Okay.
So he joined him in the living room. And you want to guess what TV show they were watching there?
Monty Python?
No.
What would have been on?
And it has a chase scene in it. I guess it was typical. There was always a chase scene in the show.
The Starsky and Hutch.
French Connection?
Oh, yeah, the movie. Yeah.
Oh, is it a movie?
It is a movie.
Oh, I thought it was a show.
No. Gene Hackman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay.
Maybe we should have like a movie series here,
We should.
just based on all the movies we talked about.
Yeah,
just now.
yeah, absolutely.
We'll start with Convoy.
Convoy, Monty Python.
Was
French
Flying
Connection?
Circus? That was a TV
That was
show.
a TV show. Yeah,
Okay.
that was. And then they had movies. They had like Life of Brian.
Yeah, and I remember the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Not my
Funny.
kind of humor. Not my kind. I don't understand
funny.
British humor.
Yeah.
But then people tell me that I have British humor. And
You
then
do
I'm,
have.
then,
Yeah,
then
you
I'm
do have a
offended.
very dry wit. I will say that about it.
I think that's true. Okay, anyway.
All right.
So French Connection.
Yeah,
We're
good
watching the-
movie. Yeah, I
Okay.
think actually Gene Hackman might have won the Oscar for that. He also won for Unforgiven, I think, too.
Okay.
That's enough about Gene Hackman. He's not really part of this.
You made him part of this discussion.
Sorry.
Okay, so anyway. Oh, yeah, so they were watching French Connection. So, as I said, Tommy left Martha at 9:30 to go work on his paper. Then he shows up. Ken Littleton's in the living room. He sits near him, and they watch the French Connection at 10:15.
Okay.
So I'll give you an idea of the timeline here. So I think this is funny. Ken Littleton just started work for the Skakel family that day.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. And they had live-in tutors, like tutors who
Yeah,
lived in the
yeah.
house with the family.
So that's what he was doing.
Yes. Talk about a crazy first day of work.
Yeah, yeah. So when Ken was interviewed by the police, Ken didn't notice anything wrong with Tommy's appearance. There was nothing amiss. He didn't have blood on him.
His
anything like
demeanor
that.
was normal.
Yeah,
and
yep.
yeah.
However, when the police followed up with Tommy's teachers, they learned that no such paper was ever assigned on Abraham Lincoln.
So from 9:30 to 10:15, what was he doing?
We don't know.
Okay.
We might get to an
Oh,
altered
okay. All right.
story that we'll hear later.
Gotcha.
The police did give Tommy a polygraph test. The first was inconclusive, but he passed the second. Dogs were heard furiously barking around 9:50 p.m. And I'm talking about the type of bark where that dog is picking up on something. And Dorothy Moxley, again, Martha's mother, heard voices around that same time. And that would make sense if this happened on Moxley.
Yeah, yeah. Now, is one of
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So
Right.
Tommy is the first picture.
this one here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Ken Littleton.
Oh, okay.
That's who that guy is.
I
Do you
thought
think
that
that was Michael?
Yes, I thought
Yeah.
that was my.
I mean, that haircut was pretty
Yeah.
common. It was pretty popular style.
There wasn't a lot of style in the 70s. Let your hair grow. Or perms.
Yeah, berms. Definitely a lot of that. So, in fact, when these dogs are barking, Steven Skakel, who I haven't mentioned yet, Steven's like the youngest around there, at least. Tommy and Michael's younger brother, like I said, woke up to screams. He heard something.
Okay.
So,
Alright.
he's in the house, like I said, across the street, something that woke him up. So, the police believed Martha was killed during this time. Ken did a bed check around 9:45 p.m., and Tommy was not in his room
Okay.
working on this paper.
Okay.
The police searched for the missing piece of the golf club. Remember, I said the handle was missing? By draining the pools and ponds throughout the neighborhood, and they were also checking neighbors' basements. I will say there has been in a couple interviews that the police had a really hard time accepting that someone in that neighborhood committed this crime. They really strongly felt like it was an outsider that would do something like this.
Yes.
They're turning their eyes away from the families that, or the family that was involved and looking elsewhere.
So they're like predisposed to think like this had to be an outsider coming.
Yeah, it's too wealthy of a community.
because
Stuff like this
Yeah,
never
because
happens.
people like us don't do this.
Yes.
People in these neighborhoods don't.
So at the time, Connecticut prohibited evidentiary searches. So no authority could get a search warrant except to look for the club. Police never secured even a limited search warrant for the Skakel house. So what the police did instead, they got permission by the Skakel family to search the home, and then they had 18-year-old Julie Skakel do the search for them.
Okay, that doesn't seem like good police procedure, but the suspect's sister is going to search the house.
Good luck.
What am I looking for? What you find? What am I looking for?
Don't worry about it.
You'll know when you see it.
I know what you're all thinking. At least I think I know what you're all thinking. That maybe Tommy is looking like quite the suspect. Are you thinking that?
I am thinking.
Yeah. But you don't trust him. Tommy did have an alibi. And it wasn't the Abe paper. Her name is Andrea Shakespeare. And what's wrong? And it's not Andrea, it's Andrea.
Andrea. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Shakespeare.
At around 9:30, she says, just when Tommy had reported that he saw Martha heading home, Andrea reported seeing him when she came to the door to fetch Tommy's sister Julie's forgotten car keys. So there was this thing that happened in the driveway where Julie, again,
The sister.
the sister, needed her car keys. So Andrea runs up to the porch, knocks on the door.
Okay.
Tommy answers at 9:30 or around 9:30.
Okay.
And he hands her the keys.
Okay.
So he was home
'Cause he
at
gave her these
9:30.
keys,
He
yeah.
came to the door.
Yeah.
So I will say though that Tommy and even Ken Littleton became prime suspects. So that's why their pictures are up.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And then this is when the Skakel family stops cooperating with police. So
When those two become suspects, then they're like, we're not
yeah,
cooperating.
yeah.
Okay.
So Ken Littleton was fired by the Skakels 6 months after Martha's death. Actually, in July of 1976, not quite a year later, Ken was arrested in Nantucket for burglary and theft. And he was given a polygraph on the Moxley murder, and he failed. No one was ever charged, and the case languished for decades. So now we're in this lull where there's really no activity on this case. But let's jump to 1991.
Let's do that.
Okay, so 1991. Does anyone remember the name William Kennedy Smith?
Yes.
Anybody else? Nope. You can tell he's a Kennedy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think he's Gene Kennedy's son.
Actually, I have a
isn't it?
picture of him on another slide.
Yes.
I didn't realize that was quite the thing.
Oh, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
He was.
Like all these big celebrities were there. Yeah, not big celebrities. All these Kennedys showed up. for
Yes.
him.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what happened in 1991 with William Kennedy Smith. He was tried and later acquitted of rape. But what ends up happening is a rumor surfaces saying, oh, he was present at the Skakel house on October 30th, 1975. That's exactly
Yikes.
who did it. That's who killed Martha Moxley.
All right. So who was saying that?
It was just rumors. He
Rumors,
yeah. Like the media starting to make
Gotcha.
some inquiries.
Gotcha.
This proved not to be true because just the way he had an alibi, like he wasn't there in Connecticut during that time.
Yeah.
But the attention sparked a renewed interest in the cold case. So now everyone's talking about it again. So in 1992, Rush hired his own team of private investigators to clear the family name once and for all. He's getting tired of hearing about people suspecting Tommy Skakel. And this is what becomes known as the Sutton Report. They work with Sutton Associates. They're private investigators. They're still in business, if you're curious.
Okay.
And so what they did was they sat down and interviewed the kids from the Skakel house. So both brothers, Tommy and Michael, admitted to lying to the police early in the investigation. Tommy changed his story and said he did not return home at 9:30 p.m., like he originally stated, but instead stayed outside making out with Martha.
Interesting. So Andrea was not telling the truth?
I don't know what Andrea was telling. She might have been confused.
Maybe she had her dates wrong.
Yes, maybe. This makes him the last person to be with her around the time she is killed and the last person to see her alive.
Okay.
So Michael also changed his story. This is where it gets strange. You already know this story, I think.
I know some of it. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when this happened. I remember it was later in the 90s, I think. But I don't want to get ahead of myself.
So Michael tells private investigators that he came home from his cousin's. So remember, he went to his cousin's house to watch Mighty Python's Flying Circus.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yep.
So he came home around 11:30 p.m. and he went to bed.
Okay.
However, he was drunk and asleep. So
I
around midnight, he climbed a tree outside of Martha's bedroom window, threw pebbles at the window, and then he masturbated.
Yeah, that I remember. I remember hearing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a strange story.
That seems weird. It just seems unusual. I don't know. I don't judge, but that seems weird.
So obviously, looking at this, Rushton's plan to clear the family name has now backfired.
Yeah. Did not go the way.
No. And the Sutton Report was leaked to the media. So now people are aware that the two boys in the Skakel house changed their stories and are looking very suspicious.
And one is having a relationship with her, and then the other is outside her bedroom window. So that seemed
Having his own relationship with her.
okay.
Okay. So actually, this is, what did I say his name was? William Kennedy Smith right here. This is him on trial in 1991. Okay. So now there's extra pressure. Like I said, that's why his picture's here. He was the one that kind of drove this case to be reopened in a way. Get ready for some familiar names.
Okay.
So we have Dominick Dunne.
I know who that is.
Yeah. So he publishes a book called A Season of Purgatory in 1991.
Okay.
It's actually a fictional story that closely resembles the Moxley case.
Yeah, I remember hearing. I haven't read it, but I do remember hearing about it.
Yeah. And then in 1997, we have Mark Fuhrman. Does everyone remember the name Mark Fuhrman? Yes.
From the OJ trial.
Yes. So he publishes Murder in Greenwich. And in his book, he names Michael Skakel as the killer. Michael Skakel, not Tommy. Because of his masturbation in the tree story. So he names him as the lead suspect. And according to Fuhrman, this is his theory, Michael was in jealous rage seeing his brother Tommy and Martha together.
Yeah.
So he claims that after Tommy went inside, Michael chased after Martha with a golf club and then bludgeoned her to death. So the attack may have occurred later than initially believed. So remember, we still have that 7-hour window to play around with. So Mark Fuhrman's theory clears Tommy from any wrongdoing. So as I said, that book was published in 1997. Then we have a one-person grand jury, which I didn't realize was a thing.
There was only one person?
Yeah, I guess that's a thing.
Who was it? Was it just in front of the judge? How do you have a grand
They
jury
named
with
it a
one person?
one-person grand jury, so I don't know. I should have done my research on that. But this happens in 1998, so this happens a year after Mark Fuhrman's book.
I remember that.
So this one person, whether it's the judge, that would make sense,
Yeah.
was convened to review the evidence in the case. After 18 months of that, Michael was indicted.
That I remember.
Originally, the arrest warrant was issued for an unnamed juvenile due to being a young adult at the time, and Michael turned himself in on January 9th, 2000. He was now 41 years old, and a judge later ruled for him to be tried as an adult, even though he was a child. He was 15 years old when this happened.
And I think his attorneys were trying to get him tried as a juvenile,
Yes, yeah,
correct?
and that didn't work.
Even though when you see him, he looked like a linebacker. He was this big, bulky guy, and he was like, yeah, he's going to be tried as like a 15-year-old. Yeah, but he's not 15.
Yeah, he even looks older than 41. If you
Yeah,
ask me.
he did look older than 41. And he was huge.
I think it was just the style of the 90s. I don't know.
Yeah,
He had the perms in the 70s, looking.
Yeah, I just remember him. He'd have a jacket.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I have a
just-
picture of him coming up.
Yeah, he just looked like obviously was not a 15-year-old. He
Yeah.
just looked like a big guy.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, he was.
That's what I remember.
Yes. So the trial begins in 2002. So Mickey Sherman, he's the gentleman down here.
Yep.
He was hired as his defense attorney. And then we have Jonathan Benedict as the prosecutor in the upper left-hand corner. So the jury heard from Gregory Coleman, and that's this gentleman here. I don't like his shifty eyes like that.
Look a little sus.
Yeah, he does look a little. That smirk, that
Yeah,
side
right.
eye.
Right.
He was a student at Elon School. Have you ever heard of Elon School?
It's like one of those elite private schools, I'm guessing.
There was just a lot of abuse happening there. This is where you were sent for like troubled kids.
Okay. Yeah.
And this was I believe it was in Massachusetts. So Michael was sent there by his father after a drunk driving incident.
Okay.
I mean, his father probably didn't know all the goings on in there, but there were a lot of beatings, just like abusive behavior.
Oh my God.
He had to wear a sign that said he killed Martha Moxley, things like that.
Yikes.
They were trying to get him to confess. So it seemed pretty, I don't even know how to describe it, but just
Sounds like it would have been difficult and
yes.
unpleasant.
Yes. So so this Gregory Coleman is testifying against Michael Skakel. But during the grand jury, so that one-person grand jury,
Okay.
Gregory stated that Michael confessed to him several times, saying things like, the first words he ever said to me was, I'm going to get away with murder. I'm a Kennedy.
Huh.
He even claimed that Michael told him about the night Martha died and said he made advances to her and she rejected his advances and quote unquote, he drove her skull in with a golf club. It is important to note that they had to listen to an auto recording of his testimony during the trial.
Okay.
Gregory had struggled with drug abuse for years, even admitting he was high while he was on the stand for the grand jury.
Okay.
And then he had died actually before the trial began. So John Higgins, he was another Elon student, also said Skakel confessed to the slaying, but he admitted that he lied to investigators and asked about a $50,000 reward in the case. Two other former students testified that they never heard Skakel confess.
So you
Take
got
that
two-
however you
two
want.
that
Yes.
They did. two
Yes.
that they did.
You had one that was
Yeah.
high on the stand, and then you had one that was
Yeah.
interested in the reward money. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then we get back to Andrea Shakespeare.
Oh, good. Yeah.
She was at the Skakel house, like she said, that night.
At 9:30.
But she's also saying now that Michael never went to his cousin's house.
Oh, he wasn't in the car when they.
That's what she's saying.
Oh. Okay.
She said, I believe she said that he was there when she knocked on the door.
Okay, so Tommy handed her the keys,
And she thought she saw Michael.
and she thought, okay.
Michael's brothers and cousins. So you remember they went to Jimmy and Ian's
Carrie's
house.
house,
That's their cousin. So Michael's brothers and cousin all vouched for Michael, claiming he was with them that night.
Okay.
But you can look at it like, is that family that's just sticking up for you and trying to cover?
Uh-huh.
Michael had been working on his own tell-all book called Dead Man Talking, and recordings for his book were used against him to sway the jury. So, prosecutor Jonathan Benedict transcribed and played Michael's own words from that book proposal over gory photographs of the crime scene. And this was during his closing arguments. So, Michael Skakel says, and I woke up to Mrs. Moxley saying, Michael, have you seen Martha? And I was like, oh my God, did they see me last night? And I remember just having a feeling of panic. Oh shit. Like my worry of what I went to bed with. But what he really said on the tapes, there was, because this was the edited version that the prosecutor used.
Okay.
But this is what Benedict intentionally left out. Michael Skakel actually saying. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I hope nobody saw me jerking off. And I woke up to Mrs. Moxley saying, Michael, have you seen Martha? I was like, oh my God, did they see me last night? He was worried about being seen outside the window jerking off.
Okay.
So that was his concern.
Okay.
So he was convicted 4 days later and sentenced to 20 years to life. That's what ended up happening. Yes. This is the Elon school right here.
Okay.
Does that look like a private prep school?
No. I was thinking of Eton College.
Yeah,
I was thinking of Eton and so Elon.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I went on Google Maps. That place, the place is not open anymore, in case you're wondering. There was like a fire on the grounds. It looks so creepy.
Yeah.
Some of the buildings are still standing.
I bet they're haunted with all the trauma that.
Okay. So we have another book. And this book is Robert Kennedy Jr.'s book that he wrote in defense of Michael Skakel, his cousin. So 8 months after Michael went to prison, Robert Kennedy Jr. got a tip. A former classmate of Michael's, Tony Bryant, claimed he knew the identity of Martha's killers. He was able to give a full confession of the crime, and in 2003, Michael's team recorded it.
Okay.
Tony claimed that on the night of the murder, Adolf Hasbrook and Burton Tinsley visited Belhaven like they've done many times before. Hasbrook was black, and Tinsley, I believe, was a mixed race, like Asian. Hasbrook, according to Tony, was obsessed with Martha after seeing her at a dance and street fair on other occasions. He always complained she hung around with other guys and not him. On that night, he took one of the Skakel's golf clubs because it was laying on the lawn. Picked it up, said he was going to use it like a caveman club and do what cavemen do. Tony wanted no part of this, so he left Belhaven and went home. When he saw them the next day, both boys claimed to have achieved their fantasy, and Tony knew what they were implying. So that's Tony Bryant there being recorded.
So they came into Greenwich for mischief night? Is that why? Or they were just...
Yeah, they would come up to visit every so often, I guess.
All right.
I was going to say, I just feel like the folks of Belhaven would have noticed a couple, because Tony Bryant was also, obviously he's black, but they would have noticed two black guys walking around the neighborhood. But in 2005, Michael Skakel's attorneys filed an appeal due to this new evidence. So they're saying, hey, we got some new evidence. Maybe we can get him off. But at the hearing, Tony refused to testify without immunity. So then they played his audio recording instead. The judge was not swayed, but Robert Kennedy's book is based on this theory, but there is no evidence to prove that they were there that night. So since then, Tony, our friend Tony, has not been living the cleanest lifestyle. He has a criminal conviction for armed robbery in California, and at the time, he's currently in prison for tax evasion. So in 2013, Hubert Santos, Michael's new attorney, complained that Mickey Sherman botched the case. So Mickey Sherman, Michael's defense attorney. Yeah. He was too chummy with the press, and he failed to focus on his brother Tommy as a suspect.
So Michael's throwing Tommy under the bus.
That's what Michael's new attorneys. Like, he didn't do his due diligence and point at somebody else.
Yeah, because Tommy's a legitimate...
You need reasonable doubt here, and you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So he didn't even call key people to testify, including Tommy, and then Michael's friend Dennis, who was at the cousin's house that night, and could have vouched for Michael, saying, no, he was. There was another person that could say that.
Yep.
And if the jury had heard their testimony, then it's thought that there would have been some reasonable doubt. Maybe he wouldn't have been found guilty.
Yeah.
So Michael's conviction was overturned after 11 and a half years in prison by a Connecticut judge, and he was released with $1.2 million bail. However, 2016, the Connecticut Supreme Court reinstates the conviction, stating that his defense was adequate. But then the Connecticut Supreme Court reversed that decision in 2018 and ruled that Michael was entitled to a new trial, but then it never came due to insufficient evidence. So that evidence that convicted him before wasn't viewed as strong enough to reconvict him next time around. So in 2020, the state of Connecticut announced it would not retry Michael Skakel, and today No one has been other than Michael being convicted. No one else has been convicted in this crime. So I know you're wondering, where are they now?
Okay.
So here's Michael. This is who you're talking about.
Yeah.
So he looks a little older here than what you're referring to,
yeah.
but he's still a big dude.
Yeah.
So Michael Skakel, following 11 years in prison, he has pursued civil lawsuits against officials for malicious prosecution. And he recently participated in a 2025 podcast to discuss the case. It's called Dead Certain. Tommy Skakel, right here.
Yep.
You'll be interested to know that I cut off his hand that was holding a Dunkin' Donuts cup.
Good body. I mean, that's big up in Connecticut.
You could be good friends with him.
We could talk coffee.
Yeah. So he's living a quiet life on the East Coast with his wife and 2 daughters.
Okay.
Then we have Ken Littleton. That's him now.
Oh, wow.
That's him
I
now.
would not have recognized.
Following the scrutiny of the case, he suffered from mental health issues and alcoholism. He later resided in Florida. He died in 2019. Then we have Dorothy Moxley. She believed Michael did it until the day she died, which was December 24th, 2024.
Wow.
And Michael and Tommy have been estranged for years.
I'm sure.
I will say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
So take that as you will. And then here are a few resources. Here's Dead Certain. This is like a 10-episode podcast. He also dives into other suspects that led to dead ends, but good listen. And then some shows that you can watch on the case as well.